We're live. All right. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Thrilled today to have Bert Wray from Chadwell with us. Funny story. So I first heard Bert on a podcast with, I want to say maybe Chris Caramica or maybe Adrian Danilla over a year ago. And had always been wanting to connect with you, given your background. So just for I'll tease a bit and I'll transition to Bert, but like background in military operations, background in obviously in supply, background in sales. So really good, perspective on how operations can affect the organization. We don't see a lot of that in this world because a lot of people do things kind of like fly by night. But I think that, as we get into the conversation today, I hope you share the same kind of appreciation for your ops background and dedication to rigor, discipline, repetitiveness, all those things. So we just don't see a lot of that. And as we get into hell yes, obviously understanding the data of what repetitive looks like and feels like helps us drive the outcomes we're all seeking to resolve. If you're listening today, if you're listening the first time, hell yes is all about how do we find customers that are seeking problems that they've already prioritized? How do we begin to kind of communicate with them, reach out to them, and connect with them in a way that they're in a position where they want to commit to change? They've already looked at alternatives. Maybe they're considering alternatives. Maybe they're probably frustrated with the historical way of solving the problem. And that's kind of like a hell yes buyer, right? And so it's easy to say it out loud, and it's kind of better. It's helpful for everybody to understand the stories of everybody that gets there, because like it's not automatic or it would be easy for everybody. As always, this is brought to you by IRCX. IRIS is AI remote maintenance software for property management. We help you with inspections, speed up maintenance, speed up turns. And if anyone's listening live, those are listening live, if you could, engagement throughout the show is a ton of fun and keeps us on our toes. And if you're catching us on the live, there we go, Danila, nice. If you're catching us on the back end of it, any comments you get, Bert and I will grab that. So thank you, Bert, for joining us today. Ton of fun. We connected at Optech and had a chat. We could have gone for a couple hours. And I think it's really interesting given what Chadwell does from a supply perspective, parts perspective. And then as we've talked a number of times, all the different disruption that's happening in the parts procurement, supply, service, maintenance market, and where that's all going. Hope we get there a little bit today. But first of all, as we always kick it off, a little bit about yourself, your background. How did you got in this role at Chadwell, and what's the problem you're solving at Chadwell?
Yeah, Guillermo, thanks. Man, it's been an incredible journey, and yeah, it was great at Optech. I got to catch you, after your pitch, and just super impressed with what you're doing, and where you've grown and where you've come from just since first meeting you. So kudos to you. But got in this industry like everybody else accidentally 20 years ago. So after you mentioned the military, my background was, I was pursuing the thing that I'd always wanted to do since I was 12, 13 years old, which was, jump into and serve in the military. And I was an NCO for a mechanized infantry unit deployed to Iraq in 2004. The whole train up and everything was 16, 17 months long. Got back in January of 2005 and looking for, there's a long story there, but like wanted to transition. I didn't see the career or the opportunity that I thought was going to be there in the military, and looking to change. And at the time, I'd started, years before, like I deployed with the National Guard, North Carolina National Guard, and I was in health club management and a trainer. That was my other passion. And a client of mine for 6 years brought me under her wing and into the industry. So started on the affordable housing side, grew that to managing an 11 property portfolio across 2 states. And like anything, I love learning. I love diving in, and just the opportunity to gain an expertise in something that's fundamentally like very unfamiliar. I'd leased an apartment for 1 semester in college. That was sort of my lens to the apartment world. I didn't even know the word multifamily was a word. So dove into that and did really well in it, to the point where I had the opportunity to kind of jump over to the supplier side. And I had been a customer of Chadwell Supply, had built some great relationships, and just using that same foundation in life, right? Our relationships are a lot of where we go and how we get there. And joined Chadwell Supply in 2013, and I've stunk it up at all the positions so much that they just keep elevating me to a new role just to try to get me out of the way. And man, it's been great. This industry and the organization of Chadwell Supply has changed the trajectory of my life. Again, just pouring in. It was one thing to learn how one management company that I worked for did things, right? How we managed, our operations and how we looked at maintenance, and then coming to Chadwell Supply and then moving into national accounts, and then getting to see hundreds of different companies are managing their operations and are looking at their maintenance, or they're not managing maintenance, right? So it's getting to glean all these aspects from these different operators, and then diving in on the volunteer side. I'm an industry nerd. My volunteerism is, I probably should mention this live just in case the Chadwells hear how much time I spend volunteering. But I serve on the local association board, my state association board. I chair my state's government affairs committee, which is weird. It's like, well, you're a supplier. Why do you care about government affairs?
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, my customers' problems are my problems.
100%.
But all that has given me a deeper lens into what are these big challenges. And what I do is a very simple thing as far as like what I deliver and get invoiced for is very basic. It's parts and supplies. I can teach your dog over there to sell MRO supplies, but I want to help my customers eat the elephant, right? So I've got simple solutions to sometimes complex problems, but it's deeper than that. So how can I help partner with your organization to, really tackle your big challenges and whittle those down to the simple things so that we can all find more success down the road.
Well, and it had to be interesting. Look at all these different operations and given the background and kind of in deep process with the garden and everything, it's like, and then being, like you said, you're on the tail end of all of this activity is to order the part. Like, it's one of the last things that happens before the part's installed. And if the part's late or it's whatever, then all of a sudden bad things happen. So how do you reconcile your experience and discipline around the operations and then getting into seeing how things are run? Like, how do you even have that conversation sometimes?
Well, again, it's there's a lot of things going on. So there's a lot of moving parts and pieces that you've got to kind of wrestle down, and how do you figure this piece out? And, one of the things that, and it's one, I set the bar, the secret of success is really setting the bar really low, right? Expect little, so it's easier to achieve, or kind of overcome. And ultimately, what I found in actually getting into property management, and looking at this daunting task of I have no idea what's going on. So okay, so lean on what you know. So before I really understood what real property management was, fundamental to what I experienced in the military, as an infantryman, I was a platoon sniper, I was a squad leader. So I had a great understanding of security, and also fundamentally, I can't improve what I can't secure. So I brought that same lens into property management that, especially in affordable housing, if I can't make this a secure environment, I can't begin to make it better. So
right.
How do I partner with the residents, and how do I enhance their experience and make them feel more comfortable in the environment that they're in, so they take greater ownership of their community? Because it's really the resident safety in a community is a resident's responsibility, and ultimately it's up to the resident that will dictate how safe a community is. So fundamentally understanding that, instead of the residents coming to me hey, you've got to fix this, it's more, no, we've got to fix this. So you take that same approach into what I do with Chadwell Supply, and it's hey, I've got this problem. And so many times it's a lack of planning and lack of preparation that creates these emergency situations. So right, how can I help you better plan? How can I help you create standards and procedures so that you stay out of these emergency situations? Because if we only live in emergency, we don't actually have room for an actual emergency. So then that kind of layers on to now you've got your staffing problems are enhanced, your operational challenges are enhanced because you're trying to lean on something that you already are operating in this emergency mode, that you don't have the margin in your operations to escalate to a different level.
You're 100%. You're on your heels the whole time. Your anxiety level is higher. Your ability to predict and plan is lower. Your cost to operate is higher. Your turnover is higher. It's really, really difficult. So how do you get? I mean, given the deliverable that you guys are, and for everybody listening, MROs, maintenance, reliability, and operations supplies. So all the things you need to do to keep things running. And like, if you don't have those parts, something, as I said earlier, like if the filter, the air conditioning doesn't work, if you don't have the gasket, the plumbing is going to leak, like all these things that you need, and you need to have those in place to be able to execute and operate. Those are things that Chadwell supplies. And so those little tiny little things are really important in the grand scheme of things in order to keep these buildings and assets up and operating. There's probably more of that than there is capital equipment, right, on the MRO side of things. And when you look at as a tail end of a maintenance experience or an inspection walk or whatever, even a turn, like how do you, and the expectations are that you get, I'm going to call Chadwell or my part supplier, and I need to have the part right away because of my bad planning. I now am pushing an emergency onto you. Like, and if the expectation is that you are going to be able to deliver the supply, or you're going to even organize your architect, your logistics, so that I can get a part in real time that I didn't plan for, and maybe you're out and I'm upset. Like, how do you turn that conversation back on them, saying, hey, like if we don't know ahead of time, like we're dealing with lead time and spare parts availability. How do you're part of this too?
Right. Well, so the first step is you can't dismiss the emergency. Yeah. So you've got to solve for the emergency first.
Yeah.
And that's what's being a good partner. And that's where like owning like the extreme ownership of it, right? Like, own this issue. Like if you're missing that item, due to a lack of planning on your part, or just that the idea of planning isn't a part of your, it's just not in your acumen, right? You're just out fixing things. So it's, you hand me the maintenance request, I go complete the maintenance request. So no one's managing the process. The process is managing you. So the first step is you've got to own that, like, hey, I can want to talk about your lack of planning and all these other things, but that's not my role. So my role is to first get you the things you need when you need it. So, and that's where, sometimes you'll go above and beyond for that customer. Like, I'll go make the run to go get that for you and bail you out of that situation.
Yeah.
But you're doing that as a part, like that's my deposit. So that's me building credit, right? So that I can cash that in to say, hey, remember, I bailed you out of this. So now when you have a downtime, can we talk about prior planning? Can we talk about, how are you managing your workflows? Have I established myself enough and have the credibility with you that I'm even, credible enough to talk about the management aspects of you. So it's all those that we're like, we got to check the ego.
Yeah.
And, make sure that I've established myself in the relationship. Like I'm here to partner with you and be an extension of your operations and help you. And if you're open to it, like I can help, we can look at these things and I've had a lot of success and I've learned a lot along the way of, I've made a lot of mistakes of pushing that on customers that say, hey, don't you know I did this? And it's tough for that environment. Maintenance professionals are a very conservative group. And I mean by conservatives, they don't want to change.
Right.
They're change adverse. So, in it, you've got to like, hey, you mind if I show you an opportunity or, help you communicate with, a counterpart, another maintenance professional that's in your same area that seems to not have these same issues, and you guys can share experiences and share knowledge. So that collaboration, instead of looking at each other as competition, is huge. And I've been super blessed with creating a lot of opportunities to have that kind of consultative, just just a leading role with our customer partners, and especially there was a huge shift in this industry, 2013, 2014 up until 2021, right? That this was sort of the golden egg, that if you could find the capital to invest in real estate, especially in apartment communities, it was almost a can't lose. You can write your ticket, 10-15% rent increases year over year with minimal improvements or updates into the community. So there's a lot of people jumping into the space that didn't have that legacy knowledge of what you do with operational challenges. So, those folks that jumped in 2013, or even if you got in 2012, only until the last couple years, year and a half, have you really been faced with the challenge of, I can't just raise rents to overcome my problems. We have to actually manage this operationally. I've got to get into the middle of my, balance sheet and work in that middle instead of just piling revenue on top of things to overcome those problems.
It's an interesting point you bring up, and I kind of think about conversations I had last 3-4 weeks. Like, I hadn't really thought about it this way before. This is why I want to kind of comment on it, is that, like, before, when things were rocking, everyone was kind of self-sustaining. The partner network, the supplier network had less of an impact on your outcome than now. But now it really is in this, we're all in this together kind of scenario. And partnering, understanding your partners and leveraging your partners is becoming more important than ever before, because doing it alone is kind of risky right now. Wouldn't you say?
Do I got your back?
Yeah, sorry. Like, doing it alone feels kind of risky right now versus like working with your suppliers and your partners, And so we're seeing, and you've seen this even like, the stuff that Adrian's doing, bringing people together and having conversations about how to improve operations. I think there's generally an awareness, and really I'm feeling it more in Q4 than even the whole part of this year, was around that if we don't work with each other to solve these problems, we're not going to survive, the 2026. And so when you take a look at like MRO, I'm curious about this, because like MRO supplies, and we've had this bit of this conversation in the past, it's like, these are commodity supplies. So how do you compete? Like, and I can think of other supplies in MRO space, but, how do you guys compete in terms of like making sure that you're able to deliver deliver on the solutions your customers are looking for?
Yeah. So, I don't want to kind of overstate this, but it's kind of easy. You just have to do what you said you're going to do. So if our model is your order our truck next day, then I've got to deliver what my customer needs tomorrow when they order today. And, I really appreciate it. It's one of the advantages of we've been super successful. Like, I started with this company. We had 6 branch locations. We're mostly a Southeast oriented company. And now we've got 27 distribution centers. We're stretched across the United States. There are more managers in our sales meeting than there were salespeople when, I started with this company in 2013. And in all that growth, we've stayed 100% focused on the multifamily industry. We're an apartment maintenance company. And I think that singular focus has allowed us to dial in our inventory and make sure that, we're looking at the data that our customers bring to us to say, okay, we know what you need when you need it. And, our owners have invested in that inventory to make sure. That's the hardest thing, right? I have no idea what my customers are going to need tomorrow.
Right.
I'm at a student housing conference right now. And the big challenge is the turn is the hardest thing in the world. And I was on a panel and I said, like, I'm the one person that gets to sit up here and say it's the easiest part of what I do in delivering to partners, because you're telling me months in advance what you're going to need.
Sure.
You give me time to work through the supply chain and accumulate all the products that you're going to need so that I can deliver it, 100% on time. But for MRO, it takes millions of dollars of inventory to have the full offering so that I can I can hopefully hit the target that you give me to when you tell me what you need at 5 o'clock this afternoon, right? So um, it's just that. It's just doing what you say you're going to do. And, unfortunately, like a lot of our customer partners out there, based on the experiences that they've had over the past, just have a low bar. So it's
Yeah.
it makes it easy for me to be successful.
Do you find that like the whole our truck next day, your order our truck next day, and then inventory management pieces, like is it more of a logistics company than a service and innovation company? Like when you think about like the whole idea of just I'm going to put an order in and you're going to get to my door next day for specific parts and specific materials, like, that's not easy to deliver on.
Right.
Like that takes a lot of work to be good at that.
I'm on the sales side, so I'd like to say we're a sales company. We're a sales driven company.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. It's 100% logistics, and the amount of personnel that it takes to, put the systems in place that we can receive the order, and the numerous integrations we have with different P2P technologies. So then to receive the order, that it goes to the right warehouse to get in the hands of an order picker that's pulling it, putting it together, packing it for a truck, all to the delivery driver. Some almost there may not be a person that's more important in this company than our drivers, because that, like the maintenance professional who is the face of the franchise for the owner operator, that's our driver, who the way that they calling ahead, meeting, making sure that it's put in the shop, and not, you don't get FedExed tossed out the window and against the door, and sorry FedEx, but so it's, you're right. I mean, the sale, it's a piece. The sales aspect is a piece, but the innovation and the technology for it's pretty fluid. And that's the one thing I've seen with this company over the years is you have to change your attention at times to meet the need, like fix the failures before they happen, right? To be aware, you have an awareness of your business enough that you can see the trend and like, oh, I've got to catch this before it fails and put some attention to this. So it's a pretty fluid thing to where, are we putting an operational focus on right now and fixing some of the delivery issues or transmission issues, or, is there a sales strategy aspect that needs to be honed in on and delivered? So it's all of it.
But I mean, I think it's interesting to kind of think about, if you kind of sit back and one, it can be a little bit full of wonder to imagine I'm going to order a part that's fairly, it's non-retail. And then all of a sudden it shows up at the building the next day and I didn't plan very well for it. And so like, that's going to happen, and it's going to happen at the right price, the right part. Like, the logistics piece of everything has to be like, to your point, do what you said you're going to do, but like doing what you're going to do is the hard part, right? Because like we all can make promises all day long, but you guys have built a business and you guys have grown, like you guys hit $1 billion this year, if I remember correctly?
Maybe. Or
upwards, like nearing that number, like heading, like that's a gigantic company and a lot of moving parts. And so like, in terms of like being able to get to where you got to get to and deliver on the promise, there's a lot of investment within Chadwell to be able to do that. Otherwise you wouldn't be able to deliver on the promise, and then you'd fall down where you couldn't on the commitment that you're making to the customer.
Yeah. It's like aim small, miss small, right? We learned that from Mel Gibson in The Patriot, right? So it's you have to, and again, I'm going to give all the credit to our owners. Remarkable individuals, remarkable as a family. I mean, they started Chad Supply back in the 70s with a vision. It was like they were residential builders, and they saw this opportunity as the building kind of residential building took a slump in the 70s. And they're like, what else can we do? And, they had these contacts, and they're like, hey, I need this part, a shower rod. And like, we could get a shower rod. So they started making shower rods, so it's like they started solving small problems. And then just in how if you deliver for people, then they will, if you do what you say, they're going to keep coming back to you. And, then it was, I remember when I first met Chadwell Supply, when they came into the Charlotte market, when I was a regional property manager, Um, and it was literally a 3-ring binder catalog, I think.
Yeah.
And it's just what they did was they came to me with like understanding my problems without asking. I mean, and that's the thing is there's a lot of consistency over what the problems that we have day in, day out operationally. So, you know, again, being a commodity can sometimes sound like a negative, but your product is a known thing, right? You know people need your
Yeah.
product. So then it allows you to focus in on the personnel aspect. Okay, how can I build relationships? How can I get that thing and differentiate my business from a relational standpoint and
Mhm.
and make it where I know you need the thing, but how do I change it to where you want to do business with me to get that thing? And
Yeah.
that's, I mean, whether it was Dale Carnegie or whoever, I mean, you can trip over books that solve that problem. So too many times if you start a company, you've got to worry about your product. Am I going to build something that's a solution that solves someone's problem?
Mhm.
Fortunately for us, is we built our business around things that we knew were problem solvers.
Yeah.
So how do we create the personal aspects so that we could build those relationships to put our product in their communities?
Well, I mean, it's important. It's important to understand what's the most important thing to your customer, right? Because, like, in a price, price makers versus price takers, you're price takers by definition, but you're able to win work because you can deliver on that commitment, which is backed by all of your internal infrastructure. So you're not competing on a brand new, thingamajig. It's the thingamajig that they know they need, right?
Yep.
And then getting to them when they need it. That's the hardest thing, because otherwise they're not going to stock the kind of inventory. They're not going to track it. And so being able to do those things, help them do their job, which is, get the turn done, get the head in bed, get the AC unit fixed, get that resident, make that resident happy. And so every conversation we've had this year in this business has been about this wonder around, oh my gosh, if we just did our job right and say what we're going to do, deliver a great resident experience, we're going to be able to keep residents inside our units and not have rents go down. But that's been something that hasn't been a priority for like 6-7 years. And consequently,
yeah, and again, like you can. I don't even know if I want to use. I'm an analogy guy, so and I have weird ones that pop up in my head. But it's like when your dog pees on the floor, if you don't correct the behavior, you're either correcting the behavior or you're rewarding the behavior. So if it's not a problem, if I continue to pay a vendor that doesn't provide for me what they said they're going to provide for me, then there's what incentive does that vendor have to correct their activities, right? You've the carrot's wrong. So and now the turn now for us is okay. We have the product, we have the relationships. Now we turn to like, okay, what's the new currency that we can really go at? And it's data. So it's like, now how do we start using the data appropriately so that we can further enhance and improve our business? And that's really the change that's come in the last. In so many ways, COVID was so good for us, and that's a hot take. I get it, but for the owner operator, everybody was a competitor until COVID. All of a sudden, COVID happened, and it created this space where, like, okay, we don't know what tomorrow is, so I need to talk to people so that we can affirm things that we know. We can talk about the things we don't know. Now we can work together to overcome these challenges. And COVID brought that to the owner operator. It was, I was fortunate enough to be on calls it started as daily, like every day we had to talk, like, what's different, what, what distillery are you getting your hand sanitizer from? All the things, and then, but we've continued that. So we've created this collaborative environment where even though they're competing for the same residents to a degree in a market, they're comfortable enough to collaborate on operational issues so that they can come together and solve the problem faster. And for us as a supplier, it helped us prioritize aspects of our model to say, okay, this thing over here is kind of on autopilot, sort of take care of itself, but this one seems to be, there's some smoke coming out of the gears on this guy, so we need to put some attention on that. And that's where, like, getting into our data, the customer driven data that, like, it's like we have all of it, how do we get in and actually extract what we need and help it, solve sales issues, solve operational issues. So um, that's been the game changer for Chadwell Supply really since 2020, 2021. Is we knew we couldn't just keep doing, like, we can't just keep growing and expect it to just be better year over year. You've got to dig in, and we've done a good job of that, and it's helped uncover opportunity and sort of look at the deal inside the deal sometimes, of finding pockets of business that we didn't even realize were there.
So in this world of data, like there's kind of like, you can guess at who the competitors might be, but like conventionally in your market, how are you seeing data emerge as a competitive lever, or as something that you've got to compete, like either a leverage for you, or that you're seeing that you've got to compete against data? Like, how are you seeing that show up?
Well, for one, it's like, especially as we grow, right? So the margin of opportunity is shrinking. If you take a market like Atlanta that we've been in, and we've grown tremendously to the point where we had to add a second warehouse to deliver to our customers in the greater Atlanta market. And it's you take a new market where you can, as we're gonna open up a new market in Denver in the next month or two. Well, the growth curve for that is pretty steep, right? You're grabbing new customers all the time. But in those mature markets, it's finding the category, or it's creating the service opportunity. So like just recently we started adding more services, because again, with the partnership and with being that trusted advisor to our customer, and it's like, hey, I have this problem, I need you to fix it. Well, if I don't, I've got to understand the data behind it, understand the nuances of that business, so that it's sometimes no is the best answer that you can offer. And so it's just because it takes you away from your core business. But if I can do it well enough, and if I understand the problem well enough, why can't I add that to my offerings? So that's the thing that we're seeing is like, until I have the data around what the opportunity is. Old Chadwell Supply would have been just quick to say, we've got a sales rep that sold a freaking tractor to a customer, just because we could special order it, and they didn't have access to a vendor. They didn't want to set up a new vendor.
Yeah.
So we bought the tractor and sold it to that customer. So it's, we had this habit of just whatever, if it can be manufactured, or sourced, like we're gonna get it to you. And we've gotten better about, like, understanding what our guardrails are. But if you're the customer and you bring some of that, and we can get into the data together, understand, like, okay, we think we can do this, and then we create the right runway for it, so that we're not trying to take off, before we're up to the right speed, and you hit those fail points.
Yeah.
And again, that's what partnership brings you, right? Is that you build the credibility, and you've made those deposits, so we can fail in this and still be successful, right? The fail point doesn't end the relationship. It's just, okay, I got it. We can keep trying harder. But if you, again, the data tells you where you are. And from a land navigation standpoint, like, I can never figure out where, if I can't get to somewhere if I don't already know exactly where I am. And that's the key part of data, is it fundamentally tells you exactly where you are right now. It can't really tell you where you're going, because things are going to change along the way. But if you don't in deep depth understand where you are, you're hindering their opportunity for success down the road.
Sure. Do you find that, like, on that data side of things, is it about, like you talked about Denver, like, was that a data-driven decision? Like we said, hey, we're seeing a lot of, like, Denver's growing really fast. There's a lot of, they're in a mature state where they're not building up the first time. Now they're maintaining and operating these buildings. So now we're going to go there, because that's where Chadwell's got to be good. And then the first step is to build a supplier network up, so we can get the supplies, we can do what we do. And then is that kind of like how you guys think of the data side, or is it like, product?
There's already some built-in relationships, right? We have partners that they're headquartered outside of Denver, but they've bought into that market. I mean, actually, right now, if you look at some of the data on, I don't mean to down Denver if any of the Denver folks are listening, but some of the data about Denver, would tell you that you don't want to go to Denver, right? You've got rent control. You've got a lot of regulatory and legislative headwinds that are impacting multifamily in that market that are restricting an owner's ability to make money, to improve cash flow, to pay for the repairs and improvements that their communities need. So, but for our model, it doesn't have to be one or the other. So yes, we're there for the renovations and the upgrades and the enhancements, but we're also there for the day to day, which from a regulatory standpoint, owners have legal obligation to make those changes and repairs to communities to keep them up and running and keep their units occupied. So it's such a big market. It just doesn't. We actually should have gone in there a couple of years ago, quite honestly, but the timing just wasn't quite right then. And now it's to a point where we have our partners saying, I want you here. And when you have that sort of built-in endorsement that that you're going to get these partnerships and the business is going to you're going to take off kind of right away. So and that's kind of how we've lately. I mean, initially when we first went in, it was just like we didn't open like our 5th branch. We opened our first branch for the 5th time. So we had to kind of get the operational rhythms down and get our SOPs in place and sometimes our success has sort of outpaced our capabilities. And again, we've been super fortunate that like everywhere we've gone, it's just our customers are ready and willing to jump on board with the Chadwell train.
It is interesting to kind of reflect on that. You guys need to have airtight SOPs and logistics processes, et cetera, in order to respond to an industry that kind of doesn't have that. Like you're the end of the whip, and you got to have that all super tight. Otherwise, you guys can't deliver on what you want to promise.
Well, the standards have to exist somewhere. Yeah. So if you don't have them as my customer, so if you're just out in the wind, right, then if you're working in that emergency all the time, that you're just taking the next maintenance request that comes off the printer, old school, I guess, or comes into your app, and there's not an aspect of prioritization of like, and the way that I used to always coach my teams is like today's work order is tomorrow's work. So unless it's an emergency or it's deemed an emergency, you don't have to drop everything to go do the new thing. Even though everyone wants to thumb through the, I'm not staking the toilet, I'll go replace the blind. Like that's, if I get to have a choice, right? So, so if you're not, again, management's happening, you're either managing your workflow or your workflow is managing you. So, that's why, again, the investment we have to have in all the parts and pieces and the standards to the speed at which we deliver overcomes the lack of standards that our customers may have. Or a lot of times it's not a lack of standards. There's so much turnover. You've got someone new in your organization that's living off of their old operational SOPs, and that's a different company, different plan. But at the end of the day, the resident has to be taken care of.
Yeah. I mean, I totally have empathy for that end of that organization. Like if you had a restaurant with 100 menu items and your cooks are turning over, your whole staff is turning over 50, 0.5% a year, you got no hope of actually being able to maintain that menu.
You just hope just bring the chicken fingers crowd.
Yeah, 100%. Please make it simple for everybody, right? And so there's just no hope of making it happen. And so I think there's a bit of like the industry needs to kind of save itself a little bit. And in order, and I'm not saying it's got to go to a military grade SOP, but we've got to like close the riverbanks a little bit so that we're not like violently whipping all over the place and then and reacting all the time. Like there's a genuine acknowledgement that this is not healthy for the business and for the people.
Yeah. If of anything, I would say we just need to be more decisive. There's a lot of decision insecurity that lives like and not just this industry, right? It's everywhere. And and some of it's because things are happening so fast. People are more afraid to make the mistake than they are about like driving the solution. But just something I've just always lived by is like winning and losing. Like when you win, that's all you get is a victory. When you lose, you get an education. So instead of being afraid to, and you see this with technology, One of the things I learned in the brief time that I was away from Chadwell Supply and started, help to start up PropTech, it was you want to make it perfect. So you're working with your design, your development, and you're just trying to get the best user experience that you can absolutely get. You want to make it perfect. And one of the things that every founder and startup leader has to learn is if you wait for it to be perfect, you'll never get there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And same thing with this business and the owner operators is like get out, make decisions, and then manage your decisions. So don't be afraid to like challenge the standards that's there or create the standard. But the other thing is like don't go too far the other direction. Like if I hear the word centralization one more time overused, like it's you can do like centralization makes sense where it makes sense. But there's a lot of things in this business that you can't standardize, that you can't centralize because it's still people. You're still talking about homes and families and maintenance technicians and leasing agents and managers and the more you get away from the human aspect, the farther you're going to get out of the business, right? And so like standardization makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways, but it doesn't make a lot of sense in life. There's so much different architecture and years of construction and what your customer likes or doesn't like, and manufacturing trends change to where, like, if you want to standardize lighting, that lighting is not going to exist in 2 years. So again,
there's an element of like the asset has to reflect the operating model.
Absolutely.
And right now we don't really operate that way. Like it's the M&A doesn't consider that to the degree. Like, whereas like, you might buy in a certain, in a dense area that you've got assets because you can run it better, but you're not thinking of it that way. You're thinking of it, I need to buy this because I want to be able to flip it or hold it and I'm going to get the revenue out of it, but not the operation piece wasn't totally expensive or variable that you didn't really think about it. I think that's happening a bit now. Like you look at like the REITs and like maybe even UDR, like they're really thinking about, as an example, UDR, like they really think about how they're going to operate the building when they go buy it, but they're owning it for a long haul, right? So it is interesting to think maybe the operating model is starting to affect the way we choose these assets and our partners and suppliers, because ultimately the vertical integration of it all, there's just less wiggle room now than there was before. And so you got to pay attention to all those moving parts. That's where you can pick up some points, Like you're an excellent operator, you're gonna be able to pick up points that didn't already exist there.
Well, like again, collaborate. Rare is it the developer, the developer manager, same company, but they don't communicate. So developers are building assets with things that the manager is coming in and changing in year one, taking over that the management of that asset. So why not build it with those components instead of having the management company incur the expense of change?
Yeah.
And I understand both sides, but there's a lot of times that conversation is not being had that it should be. We should be having that conversation. Just no one's job or part of their job is more important than the other person's, right? So and that's one thing we've learned now, that like a maintenance technician is not a decision maker. But they have all the information, right? The decision maker lacks a lot of that information, yet they're the ones making the decision that's impacting that technician, and that's where that divide and you don't get the buy-in on some of the top level decisions that come down.
Well, it's like your experience in infantry, right? Like you know what's going on the ground versus like what's happening inside the war room, and that can make a huge difference in terms of what needs to be done. And that's just not something that is, I don't know. I do think if the turnover rate was a little lower, it wouldn't be as the variability wouldn't be so violent. But I don't know I don't know how solvable that problem is. Like I know that Adrian's doing some stuff to solve that. Other folks are trying to work on that. But it's just like, it seems to be that there's a lot of competition for this talent. And
it's a tough job. Maintenance in the apartment community is a tough job, but maintenance as a skill is there's a high demand for it. So like whether you can go do maintenance in a manufacturing facility or a hospital, or, tell you what, if I don't have to be on call 24 hours a day or split call with one other guy, and I actually get to go have dinner with my family or go on vacation and I'm not worried about getting yanked away, that's a lot. So,
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that can come in, and, some of it's going to take, some overhauling of expectations, which I don't see a resident's expectation changing, right? That's why they're a renter in the first place, right? They're choosing that community because they want to just come in and enjoy their home and not worry about everything else.
Right.
So it's tough.
It will be interesting. And I think that to bring it back to the data side of things, and competing, from an MRO supplier, your role is likely going to have a bit of a shift to it, right? If I think of I've got a bunch of buddies that own restaurants, right? And so there's big food distributors, there's Gordon's or Cisco, there's Best Bridge Brand, right? And they put on courses on how to run your restaurant better, right? And I don't know if that's a path to the future where we're going to be or whatever, but they have direct relationships on how to run a better business with their food suppliers, because food supplier knows the longer you're in business, the longer you're going to buy food. And so they want to perpetuate that customer. And so
there's a common thread, right? They're like me. I get to see how all these different customers are doing business, the good, the bad, the ugly, right?
Yeah.
So that food supplier's in the same boat. They get to experience who's doing it well, who's not doing it well. And
and they feel a lot of the similar things that you would feel, right? There's fast orders, just all that sort of stuff. They've got perishables on top of it, but it's just until you figure out you have a unique perspective as a distributor, where you have a view to all sorts of different kinds of businesses, and that maybe there is an opportunity to start kind of educating them, or at least bringing them along the journey of what's practical and possible. Because that's a part that I think that everyone's kind of frustrated with is where does it start? Who decides that we need to stop the insanity and focus on and bring in even a small perspective on what a best practice might be for doing certain things, and it could be even one small thing, especially, and you typically do it where you have the most amount of benefit. Okay, so hey everybody, here's a great way to do your annual inspections, and we're going to show you how to do that, because that's going to spin off a whole bunch of work orders and part requirements, etc. And if everyone did preventative maintenance inspections on a semi-regular basis, that would smooth the demand curves for supplies, right? So you guys have a better lead time on your inventory delivery, better inventory on your better promisability on your delivery schedules, because everything was just because you knew the demand level, far ahead of time and with more regular reliability.
That's our Chadwell University. Our training department has created more stickiness with our customers. They're coming to us for that specific training, that the product knowledge, the inspection protocols, all the things related to the maintenance, because as that knowledge goes out of the industry, we're kind of filling in the gaps. So we're fortunate. We've got great trainers that have tons of experience on the maintenance side, and great educators. And so as we enhance those offerings, again, that creates more value for us to the customer. But now it's not they're not coming to us just to get the maintenance and repair supplies. They're coming to us to get the training and how to use the products. So. And
that's part of the, and what's interesting about that is that that's a differentiation from the Amazon alternative, right? I'll just use that as kind of an example. I mean, I don't know how much they're in the MRI business, but it seems like that'd be a great place for them to go. But they're not going to do an Amazon University on property management. They're not going to know. I think what's interesting about distributors. So previous to a couple of businesses ago, I had a product company. And we got into distribution. We had to get in through distribution channels to get into places. And understanding how they vet products bringing into distribution, which then they would go to their customers, was really interesting, because it wasn't just a vetting of the product. It had to be innovative enough to displace their existing SKU channels. Because it wasn't going to bring in a new product. It better be better or worth selling more than the existing stuff that we've already got. And so what I found interesting is distributors had to go out, and they have an obligation to go out and find new products. So there's a better, faster, cheaper filter I'm not going to go find it as an operator, but I do have kind of like an expectation that you go find it for me because
Right.
I want you to do that for me. That's part of the arrangement. I want you to show me how to run my business better because I'm going to order from you more often because of relationships. So like all those kind of things are things that you guys are doing that are emerging to create you different than the other alternatives that are out there. Because if we just compete on price, you're always dead.
Yeah, it's a race to the bottom, right? So, and it is tough because again, the customer at the end of the day, we just say it, right? Get it to me cheaper. I mean, everybody wants a deal. I mean, that's just kind of how we were bred. Is like, all right, and especially with commodities, right? So I've got 3 faucets. They're all the same Moen faucet. So, who can get me the faucet the cheapest?
Yeah.
And in a world that only takes that unilateral approach to value, right? That price is the only point of comparison. It is a race to the bottom. But if now I can apply, and this is where data comes in, right? So if I can apply, the timing of you getting that faucet,
sure,
makes a difference. So the disruption to the resident, the ability to rapidly solve that maintenance request, right? Turn it over. And so the resident in 24 hours goes from I don't have a faucet to now I have a faucet.
Yeah.
Like that's a big thing. So but until you provide that data set to the customer to show it's not just about price, then it is always going to be just about price.
Yeah.
Because you can't hope that they could live on the experience and understand the difference just based on their experience because you just met their expectation.
Yeah.
The other side met their expectation.
I read a really good quote last night. Is like, I hope I get it right. Nobody wants to overpay. Sorry, it doesn't feel great to overpay, but it feels really bad to underpay. Because you pay for what you get.
Yeah.
And so when you choose to underpay, you often can end up in a much more expensive situation than when you pay the fair price. That's right. And it's an interesting, in a world where you guys have so many different SKUs and there's probably rebate models and all that sort of stuff in place, but like pricing is something that is maybe not why they choose because all prices are effectively the same. When you consider the value and the stickiness of Chadwell University, which you guys deliver there, when you consider the ability to understand, some of the data, the speed to turn and how that relates to the business that we're in. And the fact is that when it doesn't have a part, somebody is feeling downtime. And that downtime is expensive in all circumstances. And so like in those cases, if you can start teaching people to do stuff with less downtime, how to smooth all that out, you end up in all these interesting situations that are helpful for everybody.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, go ahead.
A prime example what you're talking about is there's probably no one category that makes more sense to standardize than plumbing fixtures. So like if you want to standardize a plumbing fixture across your community, the minute someone introduces a value fixture, so I just went to a big box store and bought something on sale and stuck it in. The minute there's another type of fixture in your community, unless you have some ridiculous asset tracking to know exactly which unit that faucet went into, you tripled the amount of time it takes to solve that repair because you have to go to the apartment community, look at the faucet, find out what the brand is, come back to the shop. Do I have that part? Yes or no? Order the part. Now I've got to get the part and then go back and fix the faucet. The standardization, and you have that one faucet that you're depending on, that's your trusted faucet. You just grab the part you need and go fix it one time, and it's a quick repair. So it's again, that's the cost of paying for the cheaper product because you wouldn't get the deal. So it happens all the time.
And I think that's part of it, the education that needs to, like, you can feel for the guys on the floor because it's like, hey, I need to get this maintenance request closed in 24 hours. I don't have the faucet. I'm just going to go do what's normal for me to do. And you might be a value buyer and you're just going to go to the store and pick it up. And that's you did all the right things, but they ended up with the not the optimal outcome.
You also had the regional hammering on the head about budget, and that's what I found, coming into this space, especially on the national account side, is that, hey, how do you manage maintenance? Well, the budget, I'm like, that's fiscal management. That's financial management. That's not maintenance management.
No.
So you've got all these leaders coming and hammering people on the head about budget. So you're just reinforcing go spend less money, which doesn't reinforce standards of repair, right?
Yeah, and maintenance is a funny thing. Like, my first job was maintenance work forever, and like it was taught to me like kind of day one was that maintenance doesn't how does it financial outcomes is a result of a maintenance process, but you don't actually drive the financial result. Meaning that it's like the things that you do that result in a financial result, but you don't make those choices. And so what you choose and how you do it has a bigger impact on the financial outcome than the cheapest price for a faucet.
Right.
And that's kind of like the tough part to really absorb when you're looking at things, looking at invoices, because an invoice isn't actually where the expenses is coming from. It's coming from the unturned unit, the resin that churns out, the 3 times expense to go figure out what that part is, the trips that relate to solving a maintenance request, the trips or a unit that was scoped poorly on turns. Now you're back there 3-4 times. That's where the real expense is. And it's difficult to visualize that when you're looking at spreadsheets all day long. Like you got to kind of follow. If you go to site and follow people, you'll learn a lot in like one day. Just follow them and walk around and go, oh my, why are you back and forth like 9 times today? We've been back and forth, 3 hours today, back and forth. Why does that happen? I don't know. That's the way it happens. You kind of think about, oh, wow, if we move things around this way and there, we could save a lot of time and money. Well, okay, let's do that. And it's just like not, the most expensive part isn't the faucet. That's the, it's the install at the time. It's all that stuff. When you think about like the objections that you guys get in the market, and we'll kind of close this up real quick here for everybody. What kind of, given the offerings you guys have, you don't win every deal. What kind of objections do you get?
It's almost always price. Like it's
okay.
And it's on a select it's on a select offering. It's not even looking at the whole opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's a, we've got a lot of TSMs and the territory sales managers or local sales reps in the field, and they're actively selling to a customer. They've shown value at the property level. And then there's someone at a corporate level that says, that's not where we're supposed to be. That's not our relationship. So it's that relationship compliance piece, even though you've proven the value of your offering, right? You're delivering it better. You're getting it at a competitive price, but you're taking care of the problem. And so, that's the divide that happens a lot. And we're doing a much better job closing that gap as we get more involved in the national account side and sort of strategic accounts as we're getting in these conversations at the C-suite and ownership levels. But, before it's like those guys didn't want to talk repairs and maintenance. It's like I've got a guy for that. So, now that the problem is now we're managing the middle of the balance sheet. Those executives are having maintenance repairs conversations. So we're getting into the fold more, but it's typically price and more often than not, really our 2 biggest competitors are habit and convenience. It's like that.
Yeah.
The cost of change is one that's less like, I don't know if I want to change right now. So it's, but the trajectory of our business proves that, we're having an immense amount of success, showing that value to our partners out there in the marketplace. And then, as we continue to win business and open new markets, it just continues to prove out that at the end of the day, if you do what you say you're going to do, you're going to win business.
Like we used to track a ton of stuff, like on the procurement side of things, like Maverick spend versus on PO spend. And I know we don't do POs in this business, but like on PO spend was a big number because that was reflective of pre-negotiated contracts and agreements and delivery and all that stuff. Safety, compliance. Like when you guys play back your value proposition with your customers, do you go to the extent of showing, okay, here's our on-time delivery rate, here's our here's your people who went to Chadwell University, here's the full value delivered. This isn't just the parts that you ordered. Here's the full value delivered by having Chadwell as a partner.
Yeah, absolutely. Fill rate is huge. We're knocking on 98% fill rates on a regular basis. Net promoter score, if you're familiar with that, goes negative 100 to 100. And we just recently had ours reevaluated. It was a 79 net promoter score. Those are the things that kind of speak for themselves. And then, it's also changing the pitch, right? Changing the conversation so that everyone, we've had the same savings conversations for so long. And I got to a point where I'm not doing that anymore because If I offer you a point of sale discount, let's say it's 10%, you know what beats a 10%? 10.1. So it's,
Mhm.
again, we just get in this arms race of like, give me a better discount. And your discount doesn't matter. You
Yeah,
know,
not what they really want.
That's
Like
it's
if
kind of like when
Boston,
your wife goes shopping and she says, "Go, you know how much money I saved you today?" I'm like, you were gone,
yeah,
so pretty sure you didn't save me any money. But
yeah,
it's like, how can I expand your operating budget? So have a different conversation if you want a different outcome. Like, don't chase the insanity of doing the same thing and just tripping on each other. So actually deliver something that's different. And that's one thing that I've been coaching my teams to talk about. I'm not really going to save you money. Like there's never been an asset that budgeted lower for maintenance year over year. It's there's always a fundamental increase,
yeah.
right? So I'm never really going to save you money, but I can expand your budget. You take your given budget, I can expand the amount of supplies you can buy for that given budget. So if
Mhm.
I can expand your maintenance and repairs by 5%, is that something that is important to you? Today's
Mhm.
day and age, it's absolutely important. So it's have the right conversation if you want to change the outcome.
It's like it's being more like effective with your budget, right?
100%.
Versus
Yeah.
versus all the waste. It's probably a bit of a that must be a separate like a unique conversation to have because they don't necessarily think about it in that terms. I want this lower price, but that isn't actually what you're trying to. Is that really what you're trying to solve for? Is price,
Well,
right?
that's what they want, but it's not. That's not the problem. Like I've never had a customer that came to me and said, "I have a price problem."
Yeah,
Right?
not the
I've
problem.
never engaged with a customer that said, like, "I just have all the wrong prices." It's always a service related issue, and so my answer, and then I have a service problem. Here's 100 things I need you to price out. I'm like, I can't solve your problem.
Yeah,
You're asking me to solve a service issue with a price.
yeah.
And so it's getting in, and then a lot of our partners, they have a certain things that they evaluate pricing on, right, which makes a ton of sense. Your capex goods, tracking that pricing when they're not paying that much attention to the long tail of goods that come after that. And I can't tell you how many times I've found you know tens of thousands of dollars of warranty items that, hey, are you aware that these should be warranted? You shouldn't be paying for these parts.
Mhm.
And then you're working with your partnerships with the manufacturers to then get credit for it. So then they get, so that's being a good partner is,
Yeah,
I want to get in and manage this history list for you because you don't have time to get into that, but that's what I'm going to do for you.
yeah. It would be interesting to kind of like take a look at those, like the kind of the value exchange of like on spend versus maverick spend, and what the overall consequences of that choice is from a percentage basis. Because it's like it'd be curious for these businesses to double click on that and have a sense as to understand the why the maverick spend occurred, because it does. Maverick spend is often urgently driven, but has a significant impact on the ability to actually manage the overall asset. So you might save a minute, but you lost a month, and that's kind of the thing that like it's just not obvious in the minute.
It's a stronger symptom of other things, right? So you
Yeah,
don't have compliance there. You're gonna have a lack of compliance elsewhere. So
yeah,
I think it's more of a symptom that you need to look into and like, hey, how do I get this person on board with our program and our team and doing things it in the way that we've designed this company to operate. So,
mhm,
it's you know, rogue spend can be a challenge, but more so than that, it's like, what else are we going rogue in? Why
yeah.
are we not having compliance into the things that we deemed
Oh
important?
yeah, like we had one like you got rogue spend, you might not know how much you're being defrauded, right? Like we'd find, things that are bought on the at the big box store, and then they're returned for gift cards or just all sorts of stuff like that, right? And so like there's just something to be said about the being on process for that sort of stuff.
Right.
And ultimately you lead a partner with helping the predictability. Like big box store is not gonna tell you how much you spent. You don't know what you bought. Like they're not going to roll it up on a month by month or a quarter by quarter, year by year basis. You're just going to get a number, and it's going to be in 1,000 different invoices. So it doesn't help anybody anywhere.
No, I would say they probably tightened up a lot of that. I mean, that was definitely true some time ago.
Mhm.
They have helped in the reporting, and they've helped to like dial in, especially with acquisition of Home Depot buying HD Supply and Lowe's
Yeah,
Pro and Lowe's, and the acquisitions they've made. So they've they're understanding that challenge because they still want to secure that business, especially in the big
Sure.
store. But to your point, there's still loss, right? There's still other things happening that you're not being able to track. There's liabilities associated with it. So, but at the end of the day, it's like, who's bigger? Like, am I bigger than my organization, or is my organization bigger than me?
Right.
Who's running the show? And we need to get back to the point where the owners that have made the investments in these communities are dictating and driving this business the way they want it to go, and it's not bigger than, and we're not bigger than it.
Yeah, it's the team thing.
Chadwell Supply is successful not because of Bert Wray. Bert Ray is successful because of Chadwell Supply.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, that kind of gets us to the last question. Always just like, or second last question is like, what piece of advice would you give yourself? You got some good ones here. If you want a different conversation, different outcome, who's bigger, my organization or me? If I can't improve what I can't secure, what other kind of nuggets do you kind of give yourself? You have advice for yourself, advice for someone joining in, advice for asking for help. What do you tell people?
Yeah, one piece that I give, especially like young folks getting into the industry, getting into any industry. I was always this driven, like goal oriented, and as a like teenager and young adult, I had all this affirmation around me, like, wow, that's so awesome. Like, what you want to do, and like you've got these specific goals, but don't stare at life through a straw. Like, you can get so singularly focused on an objective or a goal, and you'll miss opportunities that happen all around you. So, keep your head on a swivel, and it's always important to have a guiding light, right? This is where I want to go, but you've got to stay aware enough of opportunities that come alongside that, because your trajectory and your path can change in ways that only God can know. And if you're shut off to it, you're just gonna be stuck going somewhere.
Yeah, right, exactly. I love that. Your first hypothesis statement might not be the final hypothesis statement, and be mindful of the things that are going on around you. Otherwise,
you'll prove the first one. The first one, you'll prove
right. Like it or not. Who should we talk to next on the show?
Man, have you talked to Sean Landsberg? Have you had him on the show?
Oh yeah, I had Sean on. Sean's a beauty.
Yeah, I love what they're doing at AppWork. Of course, kind of a homer there, just in helping get that off the ground. But I'm super proud of the success that they've had, really just in this year. The way they've grown.
They've had an incredible growth curve this year. We just announced a partnership with them yesterday. Just doing some work with them in terms of like helping each other out and grow the message around maintenance. Right? How can we solve the demand and supply side?
Yeah. Man, he was my one. You give me, I've had a lot of exposure, so my brain doesn't work too well certain times.
Oh, that's all good. No, Sean's a good one. I actually was just doing some clips about it yesterday. So he's a beauty. Good recommendation. Certainly we'll have him on down the road again. Him and I are both passionate about the site teams and how can we make their lives better.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening today. Appreciate you guys listening on the live. And any comments you have, tag us in there. We'll get notification. You can jump in on that. Listen on the podcast on Apple or Spotify. Add any comments, download. That always makes it easier for people to find us. As always, this is brought to you by IRCX, AI remote maintenance and inspection software for property management. Help you speed up turns, speed up inspections, and speed up maintenance. Bert, it's been awesome having you on today, man. I've got a lot of bolded notes here. They're going to make for a good follow-up. But thank you for making the time, especially the conference today. And thanks, everyone, for listening. It's been wonderful. We've got a sprint of shows to close out the year. So hopefully we'll catch you in one of them. And otherwise, thanks very much, and have a great close out for the year to everybody else. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
It was awesome, man. We're off.